Hi, my name is Harley Jannsen. I'm the digital lead for Minnesota, Wisconsin. And today I'm going to do a presentation with Mike Gronski, who's a field agronomist in northern Wisconsin. We're going to talk about the digital tools of Corteva and how you can use those to optimize your farm. We're going to start out talking about the tools that Pioneer has, what's new and different about them, and practical ways that Mike has used those out in the field. We'll then transition into the granular set of tools and talk about Granular Insights, the new exciting tool that we have that helps us understand variability and apply some financials to it. And then lastly, we'll take the next step and talk about granular agronomy and granular business and how we can take that variability and actually do something with it. In this whole ag tech space, there's way too many times that we're worried about pretty pictures. And instead, with the Corteva tools, we want to turn those pretty pictures into actionable decisions and with real life examples. And so we're excited to share that with you. Thanks.
Welcome everyone to the last session of the day for you guys. I hope you found some enjoyable stuff today. So know quite a few faces in the room. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Gronski. I'm a field agronomist with Pioneer. Working on my 4th year with Pioneer now. Prior to that, I worked in retail agronomy for 8 years. I worked for a cooperative doing scouting and recommendations, nutrient management planning, variable rate, map creation. So kind of a wide variety of things that I did in that role previous to this. So,
yeah, my name is Harley Jannsen. I cover digital tools so much about the tool, but some of the practical applications that we've used and how we use those. Because if the tool is nothing more than providing us pretty pictures, it's not much value. We've got to get, as a industry, these tools have to tie us to profitability. They have to tie us to it changed the way I did something. And so hopefully you'll see us do that. So with that, Mike's going to start walking through. There we go.
All right, so we'll start right here just talking about the Pioneer Seeds app. So I'm assuming a few folks in the room have had the opportunity to work with this in the past. The cool part, you're going to see a lot of changes to this in the next month and a half. So in the past, when you look at what you could do within the Pioneer Seeds app, you had the yield estimation piece where you could actually go out, take photos of your ears, and essentially put together some potential yield estimates to look at. It was as good as the effort you put into it, right? If you want to go ahead and get a good stand count harvestable ears, and I would recommend taking more photos. And the cool thing is that it allows you to take as many ear photos as you like and average that out. So it's going to give you a more accurate idea of what that's going to look like. Overall, my thoughts as far as the accuracy that we experienced with the yield estimations this last year, everything was off by a tickle, but it was for one particular reason, right? How was everyone's corn this year that you combined? Well, what were 2 things that were disappointing in it? Light, right? So if you factored in the test weight portion of it, I'd say that's where some of that variability came from, what we observed in the field using the app versus what we actually took home and put in the bin after the combine. So the other cool piece on that slide, I just mentioned some of the other things we're going to tie in. So in the past, we had a plantability app that we would use in terms of how we want to set up our planter. And then we also had our planting rate estimator, which was an individual app. This is all going to get tied into one now. And you're not going to have 5 to 6 different apps on your phone to do this. It's all going to be right there in one individual app. The cooler part about this is that there's actually the opportunity to save and share notes within the app. So I'm using the app, or maybe the seed rep is using the app, or at a grower level, if something's observed in the field, you're able to pin it, send a note, and it will be stored in the app throughout the course of the season. And also, we're going to have the ability to tie in a stress factor piece. So if you look at a corn leaf, and you're like, what is this given disease? Or if you see a pest, what is this particular pest? Take a picture, and it's going to give you out an answer right there while you're out in the field. And you'll be able to store that in there too as well. The app will give you an answer? Yeah. The app's going to be able to do that. Beyond that, we talked about the planting rate estimator. So now instead of having that separate app, it'll tie in. You're going to be able to look at what that optimization rate, the best ROI for a given hybrid is going to be. But the bigger piece is the plantability portion. And this is something where I think it's often overlooked, but let Harley talk a little bit here on just some of the science that goes behind the plantability.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is we have a lab where we try to source every row unit out there on the market, and we set it up in a little shop, and then we take every single batch. So every batch of corn that is processed and then bagged, we get a sample of that batch and we run it through every row unit. And then basically that's verifying and validating how that's going to plant. And so by simply taking a picture of the bag tag, you're going to be able to grab the batch ID, which will then return to you information. So for instance, on this case planter, what planting disc, what's your singulation rate, what vacuum to start with. Again, these are all starting points, and you're going to finesse that on your own with your own information as well. But it's just something that we do and it'll be at your fingertips to be able to set that planter up right. We all know how important that planting pass is, and this is a piece of information that's at it. You know, other information by scanning that bag tag, you know, you get to see the management comments, the information that comes with that.
So the last piece here, just looking at, you know, so this is what a field may look like as you get to the end of the year. You've stored all your notes in there. You're able to do any potential threats in terms of pest diseases that you've identified. Your yield estimates are in there as well. Then also, obviously, your in-season imagery piece is still a part of the Pioneer Seeds app like it has been in the past.
And maybe just as we talk about, you questioned or asked a question about detecting what it is by taking a picture. As we move into the drone components of that, sometimes the best inventions that you come up with is something that you just kind of stumbled upon. So one of the things that we found is the ability to process an image, whether you take that picture with your phone, whether you take it with a drone, or whether we take it with satellites. The science is all about the ability to process the image. And it's an area that we think we have a really strategic advantage of compared to some of our competition. And the reason we have it is probably by accident. We, about 17 years ago, put a giant greenhouse complex in at Pioneer in Johnston. And we went to the Netherlands and went and saw greenhouses that they use for flowers and all the technology of greenhouses that are in Holland, and we implemented that. So these greenhouses have basements, sometimes multiple basements. The trays of corn are all automated with robots. So the trays of corn move around the facility. They go into a bay and they get watered, or they go into a bay and they get nutrients added to it. But one of the bays that they stick this tray of corn in takes a whole bunch of pictures of it. And so 17 years ago, we started taking pictures of corn and then had to start hiring people that could process and figure out those pictures. And 17 years ago, the whole point of taking the pictures was to measure the ear height. You know, we used to do that by going out in the fields with a stick and measuring that. You know, 17 years ago, it was measuring the width of the leaf. So, you know, some hybrids have big floppy leaves. Some stand up a little bit more like a pineapple. Some of them have wide leaves, some of them narrow. And we started taking all these pictures and doing all of this processing of these images. And what that did is then we hired people that were really good at that. And one of the challenges is green is a really tough color. So just like color blindness and red-green, it's a color that's really difficult to recognize and to process. And so now, you know, our data science team includes people that have left Facebook and come to Pioneer. Instead of working on facial recognition or your face on your Apple phone, we hire those types of data scientists to help us recognize corn hybrids and to do something with it. So we got all these people that know how to do that, and all of a sudden now tools are just coming out because we can apply that. So it started out as a little bit of a gimmick. I could take an ear of corn, I could take a picture of it, and could count the kernels. All of a sudden we got so accurate at that, we're better than the human eye is, right? We thought it was a bit of a gimmick that we could recognize an ear by just taking a picture of a whole plant. Well, now all of a sudden, we don't measure ears anymore by hand. It's actually more accurate and faster to just literally have a video camera drive past a cornfield and it sees the ears and it measures the distance to the ground, right? So all of that's turned into what you're going to see is I can take a picture and I can really accurately, you know, how good our phones are these days. It's a little scary. I can take a picture of that leaf and I can compare that with the thousands of pictures of leaves that we've had for years and years and years. And I can say, oh, degree of confidence. Sometimes it might not be really confident and it's wrong. Maybe it was not manifesting it well. Maybe it's just a hard one to capture, leaf spot or something. But other times it's going to give you a 99% accuracy, right? Pretty crazy how good our phone is at storing pictures of us. And so that's kind of a thing. what was cool is as we got into drones, we were able to then even build our own apps to process images. And Mike will talk a little bit about that.
So within the world of Pioneer, every field agronomist and product agronomist within the company is equipped with a drone. Now, contrary to what my 6-year-old little girl thinks, that that's a really cool way to take pictures of her horses in the pasture, there's actually more use to it than that, right? So there's 3 different basically apps or platforms that we work within in terms of what we're doing on the catch observations. Maybe you found an issue within, you're looking at your imagery within your Pioneer Seeds app. We want to truth it, so that's the software that we use for that. That's all free flying. Then we have the drone deploy app. We use that as we essentially build a field boundary. From there, we set that drone photo of what the field looks like today, and then assessing you're going backward. And then the last piece is just the stand count or the gap analysis. So this is something that was initially brought out in impact, which is impact testing is what we do on-farm testing the last 2 years of hybrids or soybean varieties before we commercialize them. And what this software allows you to do is you can actually do stand counts without having to go out there and physically do them yourself. So you have to catch the corn at that V2 to V3 stage. Reason being is if it's any smaller than that, it's kind of hard for the software to analyze the data and pick it up. And once you get past that V3 stage, you start to see the plants overlapping, and then it all just kind of muddles together into a ball of unusable information. So these are just some examples of some things that I did with my drone this last season as we were out looking at things. In the upper left-hand corner, this was just over the Marathon City area. So the grower had decided, to leave an untreated check in this field from fungicide. This field's had a heavy history of white mold, and he's going, it's been, I've never planted beans this late. Is this going to pay? I'm going to leave a strip just to see. And then, Paul had mentioned to me, he said, boy, we're really starting to see some changes and blow the drone up. And we went out there and looked at it, and then proceeded to ground treat it. It was incredible. Those plants were nascent and going backwards at an incredible pace as we got into that later August, early September timeframe. Next photo over, that's actually a variety plot of soybeans. And where I use a tool like that is, so now every year, we have new soybean advancements, correct? And as you look at these advancements that we do, the question always becomes, we get our scores from our product agronomists and what it looks like, but sometimes it's just nice to get a real live feeling of what that's going to look like compared to maybe some of the staples in our lineup. And so in this instance here, I was able to fly that plot, and I can share that back with the rep team, and they can use that from a standpoint of positioning products the following year and say, well, this new product really held up. Look at it. This, from a white mold standpoint, we didn't see as much pressure as we had on this product that we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years. So it helps to put more information into our minds. This one here was kind of an interesting one. I was with the grower. We were walking a field, livestock operation, and as we're walking, there's just every so many feet this continued pattern of marginal corn was going on. And he said, well, do you have the drone in the truck? I said, well, absolutely. And we got the drone up over the field, and I didn't hardly take a photo. And he goes, I got to figure out a better way to get this manure out in spring. And you can see the diagonal pattern against the corn rows, and it was pretty devastating. There's really not another good word to go with it, but you can see it was pretty impactful, that given field. And the last piece, just, we had some heavy headline winds this year. So just using the drone to be effective and cover more acres in a timely manner. So, instead of trying to walk fields and find problem spots, you throw the drone up, you can scout 40, 60, 100 acres in no time flat. The next piece here, looking at a field, actually somebody in the room will probably recognize this field, but we were chatting one day, and I was out looking at some of the fields within the operation, and he had commented, he goes, I really feel like that the soil type's hindering me in that given field for the year we've had. So went out to the field, and visually from the road, I could see a variation in the corn. It almost looked like different hybrids at first. So the photos to the far right, the one initially to the right, I'm looking at the corn to the north. And overall, everything looked good. Nice no-till field. For the year we had, I was very, very impressed. And you turn around and look to the south, it almost looked like different corn. So from there, I plugged the field into my drone deploy app, went ahead and set up the field boundaries, flew it, and areas on the map that are represented in green are showing areas of better plant health, or I should say more growth, and then the areas that are in the red and the yellow are showing a decline. And you can see it directly ties back to, from that point, once I saw that, I'm like, well, let's pull this field up and let's look at the soil type. And you could have laid those two right over one another. And that's where the correlation, Roselle versus the loyal soil. I know you guys, that's all you guys have, right? But other things we use it for, this is a great example. I call it the wonders page. So retail came in, put some urea on a PKP plot for us here on the top portion of that photo. And as we're walking that plot, you can see the variability. It looked tough already. And it's like, well, let's throw the drone up over it and we'll make the final decision. And, we got Chad was with me that day and we got to look at it. It's like, well, we appreciate that you put the plot in. If you want us to harvest it, great, but this isn't data that we can't use this. I mean, this is plain and simple. The next one over to the right, this was another one. So on the southern third of that field, that was actually applied with a retail, one of the newer spreaders in the area, and they applied urea over the top of the corn, and you can see the streaking or the patterning in the field. You can see where there's over and under application that occurred. And then the northern 2/3, that was actually wide dropped on, and you can see there's more of a level of consistency and you're not seeing that streaking and patterning within that given field. Then the last piece here is just talking on the stand count analysis. And when I look at stand count, or we have that discussion, right? When you feel that your stand count is less than optimum, where do you focus your attention when you go to that field? To the worst spot, right? Thanks, Jared. You go to the worst spot, right? And that becomes the focal point of what you're looking at. The hard part is you have to look at the bigger picture sometimes to make a really good educated decision. So we went out here and we knew we had some stand loss from the spring we had. It had been pretty wet. This field isn't it's more of that fine royal soil you guys love so much. And as you get out there, start looking at it, and yeah, there were some frustrating spots. We were targeting 32,000 plants per acre, and we had some spots like the yellows or the low to mid 20s. But as you looked at it as a whole, there was quite a bit of that field that still had upper 20s, low 30,000s from a plant population standpoint. So while it wasn't what we ideally would have liked to have seen, it was still enough for us to give us an educated answer that, well, while it was disappointing, it certainly wasn't worth destroying for the year that we had. And now we had an idea of what that whole field looked like. We can also use that too in terms of just thinking, what's that yield potential to look like? Because as I was doing this, we were still fortunate enough to plant. We're still planting corn in that area. So now we can make that decision, well, maybe we need to plug a little more corn in the ground so we've got enough couch out for the girls this fall.
What I think is interesting with this is that you see this raw image. So there's nothing special about the camera. It's not an expensive sensor or anything else. This is just a picture that's taken at 40, 50 feet, looking down. And what the software then does is it's a little hard to see, but you see a little red dot. So it is recognizing that that's a corn plant, and it's putting a little red dot. And after it starts putting little red dots, all of a sudden it can recognize this is a row, and I'm going to put barriers on it. So it'll auto detect if this was 30-inch rows, if this was 20-inch rows. We auto detect in our seed plant or our seed production if this was a 4 and 1. So if we had 4 males and 1, a 4 and 2, something, it will auto detect that. And then the last part that's really interesting is then, because it can do that and it's measuring distance between spots, it's measuring rows, it now can start to measure gaps. So we can set up the parameters and we can fly that drone and instantly say what was the quality of the planting that was done, right? We can start to look at how many gaps that we have. You might see that in as planted data. You might see that in your precision monitor, but now you get to see it actually in plants that have come through the soil, come up out of the ground and in stand. And you can start to diagnose and understand what you're doing with your planting technology and maybe what you can do better. Obviously a little tough when you're at this point to readjust the planter, but it does give you that information going forward. So with that, we're going to pivot into some of the granular tools. Up until this point, we've talked about stuff that's Pioneer branded or Pioneer tools. Many of those tools, Mike is in that tool with you as a grower. Your seed rep is a part of that. As we transition to granular, this is where we get a little bit more laser-like focus on the grower. So the focus is on a tool that's for the grower. That information that's plugged into these tools is not shared with anybody unless you give permission. So Mike doesn't automatically get into any of those tools or use that unless you explicitly say that. So Granular is a company that was a software company founded in 2014 out in San Francisco.
We acquired them just in 2017 and really working on standing that up as the third division of Corteva. We have seed as a division, crop protection, and digital. Granted, the digital component is significantly smaller than the other two, but really trying to focus on how can we get these tools in the hands of growers to make them more profitable. And so we'll kind of walk through a few of these tools. The first one being Granular Insights. This is a brand new piece of software that just launched officially yesterday. We've had some people in it the last few weeks, but what this really focuses on is just two kind of key areas. One is analysis, so I can put my as planted and my harvest data in it, and I can start to slice and dice. But instead of just giving pretty pictures, a heavy focus is on how do we apply some financials to this? How do I put some seed costs, some revenue? What did I actually market this corn for? How do I put some of that into it so that we can not just drill down and see a representation of yield or as planted, or see how many seeds or how much yield by hybrid, but I could see what actually was my maximum ROI. And just being able to do that in a visual way. I think the last component of it is then also to have some insights that are kind of pre-baked. And the example I just used with this, and I know some of you have heard me share this one, is just that metrics drive your behavior. You see a metric and that's what drives your behavior. Toyota figured this out long ago in manufacturing facilities with screens up there that drive people's behavior. I think the biggest application I see in agriculture is in planting technology. So my dad's 67, he farms 2,000 acres. He's pissed off all the time. He's the average Iowa farmer. And so, yeah, you're right. My brother's a seed rep in Iowa. I work for Pioneer. We talked to my dad. Dad, you're driving way too fast. I mean, when you're planting it, it's just freaking beating hell across it's always gonna rain. He's mad, he's planting, and for some odd reason, he thinks he loves it. And so, it's weird. So we're like, Dad, you gotta slow down, and just not slowing down. So eventually it's time to trade the planter or upgrade row units, and he chose to upgrade row units, put precision planting throughout it. This was before high-speed technology, but just put precision planting in. Got the 2020 in the cab. First year we start with that, he starts planting. What do you think happens? Slow down, right? I couldn't tell him that. My brother couldn't tell him that, but there was a metric in the cab, and it was, yep, it was the red box, and it's either red, yellow, or green, just like a stoplight, and it's using the exact same psychology of that. And you can decide for yourself whether you think that that's a real negative $20 an acre or not. And the guy in the last session said he started unplugging it because it was giving him an ulcer, seeing the negative 20 bucks an acre. But it drove behavior. And as a mechanical engineer, I think what they did with the row unit and the mechanics inside it is really interesting. I think it's real. But I also think that by putting a box in the cab that showed you red that you're doing something and caused you to slow down might have had a lot to do with it as well. And what we're trying to show is just simple things like that. We know that seeding rates, harvest moisture, planting dates, your harvest dates, those have impacts and financial impacts on your operation. You know, even with my dad, I talked to him about harvesting a little wetter. That might actually be better. And he says, well, you're not writing the check for the propane, right? But if I can show him with his data that he actually is more profitable doing that, and I don't have to do a whole bunch of work and a bunch of spreadsheets. I just plug the data in, we put the costs in, or we just use industry standards. And that can start to show some of those things. Then we get to decisions. And so that's the whole goal, is how do we get past pretty pictures? And I'd say that the entire ag technology space, ourselves included, hasn't done a good job of that. And my hope is that we're starting to get to not pretty pictures, but we're getting into some free software that you can actually do some of those things. So that's the analysis component of it. The next component of Granular Insights is also using satellite imagery. And we won't belabor this. You've all seen images and how you can use some satellite imagery to see some different things, from white mold to nitrogen deficiency. And Mike's going to talk about some real life examples that he used this past year. But I think what I get really excited about was what Mike will finish on this.
So this was back, actually, this was some 2018 imagery that I had that I pulled up. And this is a field where I normally didn't see that much variability, but if everyone remembers back to what 2018 was in this area, right, we had pretty nice planting. And then what happened in July, right around Farm Tech? Water just shut off, right? So there's a variation in this field in terms of soil type. And as we're getting into the fall, you know, I start to see a big change as I pull up the image of the field and watching that plant health continue to recess in the southern portion of the field. I'm like, you know, it's a good field. Let's go out and ground truth this and see what it looks like. So the blue dot, that's indicative of where I was, and I took these given pictures in the field. And as I got up into the north portion of the field where we had a heavier soil type, a little better water holding capacity, we were able to withstand the drought, really finding some areas of outstanding plant health. We weren't seeing tops broken off. I wasn't seeing any top dieback in there either. You know, things looked very good. Everything was very healthy. You know, the ears were very much intact. And then from there, I proceeded back down in the southern portion of the field. And once I got in there, I just kind of found this hot mess, right? We had a bunch of anthracnose top dieback that was going on. You know, as you grab some of the ears, some of the plants that had been senescing for longer periods of time, we were finding some chafiness. And then from there, I split some of the plants open. And, you know, once I pulled back the leaves and the stalks, you could see the anthracnose on the exterior portion of the stalks. And then obviously, once you split them, you could see that as well. So then from there, you know, what did that look like and how do we use that tool? Well, the big thing I would say is as we get to fall in terms of how do we plan our harvest strategy, right? And often it becomes, well, this year it was a matter of, well, where could I go that I wasn't going to sink my combine in China, right? But on a normal year, you know, you want to strategize that harvest based on the standability of that crop and what it looks like. But that takes a lot of time to go field to field to field to field to check it out. So in this instance here, this would be an opportunity where it would help you prioritize that field. And it's like, okay, now I've identified some stock issues from using that imagery by using the ground truthing beyond it. This is going to be a higher priority field, so we don't leave it out there any longer than we have to. As we look at how we tied, you know, so look at that imagery, that piece here in the center, but on the far right is just what that yield map looked like. And, you know, we had some corn that was bucking upper twos in the northern portion of that field, but as you can see down to the south, you know, yield dipped off in a hurry, and we had some stuff that was, you know, barely floating with one. So the coolest part about it, right? So who has used our imagery in the past to look at some of their fields? Hey, we got a few hands up. That's good. We've made some progress. Thank you guys, right? But how about using it, right? You guys sit down every other day, go field by field, compare an old image to the new image. Everybody's got time for that on their operation, right? I'm not seeing a lot of head shaking. Yes. No, the answer is no, right? Now, at the end of the day, sometimes it becomes a forgotten tool. With the new insights portion of this, you will get prioritized scouting based on what's being observed in that field. So when you go ahead and open the app up, what it's going to do, it's going to break out your fields by crop, and then it's going to break them down by fields that have a high priority for, you're going to want to look at the images, maybe do some ground truthing or drone flight, to medium to low. And that's going to, and how that's analyzed is going to take the most current image that you have for that given field, and then it's going to look at the images that have been taken the 2 weeks previous to that to basically put that analysis together. The other cool part is you know what, you still have to open the app. Sometimes we get forgetful, we get busy, right? Someone said we had summer this last year. I'm still trying to figure out when that happened. But the nice part is even if we overlook that, you'll get a weekly reminder in your email, and it's going to show you what that priority list looks like, just so it's something that doesn't get overlooked or potentially underused, and you can continue to use it to bring value to the operation.
Yeah, so thanks, Mike. I think that's key, is that, you know, spending a lot of time around imagery and around satellite imagery, I think there's value, but the pictures just, I don't need more pretty pictures. If you can tell me which fields to go focus on, I'll go ground truth it, because it's never, there's no such thing as a silver bullet. It's lots of lead bullets, right? So this is one of the lead bullets. My own eyes, my own feet on the ground is a lead bullet. It might be other components of those. And so the next one we want to talk about is granular agronomy. So this is the stuff that's kind of formally was branded in Circa as we've kind of restructured and got this in order. As we've walked you through tools like the Pioneer Seeds app, which are more informational, help you get information, maybe take a few pictures, share some notes, to Granular Insights, kind of ratchets up into understanding and slicing and dicing some data using some satellite imagery. Granular agronomy starts to get into the ability to characterize the variability. So we've talked about variability, we've seen it in pictures. now can I characterize it with my yield data, with LiDAR data to get topography, with imagery? Can I smash those together and get zones that are representative of the field? Because if I can characterize the variability, then I can minimize the risk of over application, and I can minimize the risk of under application. And that's the whole name of the game when we get into this. And we do that by creating that decision zone, applying targets to it, and then ultimately taking that to seeding, nitrogen, PK, and line. And so we'll kind of walk through a few of these, because these are the ways that we can figure out how we not just save our way to prosperity, but that we can bushel our way out of it, right? So adding a bushel, multiplying that times the price, and doing that in an economical way is the fastest way to get there. We don't do this in isolation though. We bring in a lot of science. So Cronus is the crop model that we use to generate hybrids. It's the ability to bring hundreds of millions of crosses together in order to pick the right hybrids. What that does is we know from a hybrid specificity, things like nitrogen use efficiency and uptake. And we're just starting to get that into modeling so that we can start to use that in things like nitrogen management, because we know that timing is key.
Right. See, I mean, I look at it, so I've worked in the world of agronomy since 2008. So I'm really an infant in the world of agronomy compared to some of the years of experience I see sitting with you, right? But I look back at 2008, and a lot of the nitrogen strategies that we had back then were what I call the fishing and forget it technique, right? We plant the corn, we spread our fertilizer. We hoped there was yield there come fall. And we did a lot of that, right? So we watched progression then we started watching retailers purchasing more equipment to make in-season applications over the top of corn, and then we've gone that next step, and we've seen the Y drops introduced, and we're seeing them encompass more acres in terms of, later timing, more applications, better placement. Having the right amount of nitrogen there throughout the course of the season, that's a complex thing, right? We have a lot of livestock in there that we work with. How are we accounting for that? We've had these obscene amount of rainfalls, or not so much the number of rainfalls, but the amount of precipitation that we get with an individual rainfall. And then we're trying to also keep track of, are we having organic matter breakdown, or are we in a cool year where it's kind of stagnant, we're not going to be able to reap that benefit? And how are we going to have enough nitrogen there so when we get to tassel, we have that 40% left so we can get to maturity and not be disappointed when we run the combine through it come fall. So as you look at what that modeling is going to look like, it's going to account for your precipitation events that occur. If you're in a situation where you're running an irrigator or you're fertigating, you can add those scenarios into the equation as well. Once your planting date's there, it's going to start it's going to work with everything that's gone into that equation, even your fall manure applications, and it's going to start predicting where you're at in terms of nitrogen. It'll take you out to the current day you're at, and then from there, it's going to predict what that'll look like 14 days beyond using the current weather forecast. Now, how does the rest of it piece together? So as we keep advancing through the season, basically we're keeping track of what's left in the tank, right? Did we lose nitrogen leaching? Did we lose some of the nitrification? Whatever the case may be, it's accounting for that. But the crazy thing is that as you look at this portion of the slide, what that shaded area is trying to depict is the range in this given field that you might expect to have for available nitrogen at that point in the year based on the last 20 years of weather events that occur in that particular field. And that range is just about 50 pounds. Well, 50 pounds of nitrogen could be the difference between an awesome crop or what happened here when you start running through the field with the combine.
Yeah, and I think the best analogy I've heard of that is, we're trying to hit a target and we're trying to pinpoint that, and that's not easy to do, and it's not perfect by any means, nor would we ever advertise that. But it's a tool in the toolbox. It's one of the pieces. You wouldn't buy a brand new truck, fill the gas tank completely full, and set out on a 500-mile trip. And just by math, you should have enough gas for 505 miles, right? That'd be cutting it pretty close. What happens if you got behind a slow-moving vehicle? What happens if you started driving extremely aggressively? What happens if you had a lot more hills than you were expecting? All of a sudden, it'd be really handy if you had a fuel gauge, right? So that's the whole point of this is, we're trying to hit that spot. The goal of using nitrogen modeling and granular agronomy is to have a fuel gauge along the way to help you make those decisions. How that manifests itself, it goes back to those decision zones. That particular line that we were showing was just one spot in the field. We apply that across all of those zones. create that variation and get to that variable rate nitrogen prescription if we need to. Sometimes we don't even do that. Sometimes people just want to be able to see that, because even in flat rate applications, having this knowledge and understanding is what they need in order to make the decisions they're trying to make. But it's not just nitrogen. What we want to get into is also understanding what are those other yield limiting components, and how do we have the right tools to get at them.
So the other aspect of the granular agronomy portion is that besides the nitrogen management tool, is looking at using variable, using grid sampling to apply nutrients where we need them for the best response for our dollar, right? So in my time in retail, I got to experience all versions of this soil sampling, right? So what we're looking at is a scenario of the same field, sampled 3 different ways, right? So we do the old standard composite sample. We took, took a field, took one sample, told us the pH is 6.0, put on 3 tons, that's the rec. We spent $90 the acre on lime. So then we look at zone sampling, right? That was kind of trendy for a little while. You look at maybe based on where you're getting more or less yield within a field, or looking at it by soil type. And okay, at this point here, okay, the average pH ended up being about 6.2. We didn't need quite as much lime per acre. Soil sampling costs were still relatively low. As you look at each of those examples, though, what's the common trend you see? In both scenarios, we're still over applying lime in portions of the field, and other portions we're still under applying lime, and we're not making the best use of our resources. So we take it to the grid sampling portion, and often when I bring this discussion up, the first thing is, what's this going to cost me per acre? Why would I want to spend that much on soil sampling? And the answer becomes, because more times than not, and even prior to my time with Pioneer, I looked at retail, we could more than gain back the savings just in lime itself, because we're not overusing it. So you look at it in a scenario like this, in a 2.5 acre grid, your pH average was more like 6.4, and by variable rating lime where you needed it and where you didn't need it, we ended up averaging only 2 tons of lime to the acre. So depending upon what scenario you compare it to, you're still basically saving anywhere from $15 to $30 an acre, and you have a field that's equipped to grow a good consistent crop throughout it and still not have variability. Why do I like lime? Nobody likes to talk lime. It's like the Jeep of farming, right? Everyone wants to talk nitrogen, hybrids, population. Nobody wants to talk about lime. Why do I like lime? This is a great example. So if you sent your soil sample into a lab and you had a continuous corn rotation, you will get back a lime recommendation based on the most sensitive crop in your rotation, which in that case, if you only have corn, they're going to say you only need a pH of 6.0 to grow corn. Well, that pH is correct in terms of crop sensitivity. The challenge is that no matter how much fertilizer we throw at it, we still have waste, right? These nutrients aren't available to the crop. So we could have spent all the money in the world we wanted to in fertilizer, but really we should have started up front with a good liming application. The next piece here, anyone that's probably been to a UW presentation has seen the old stave barrel, right? I think that's Kellen. We went to River Falls. That's like one of the first things you see with Steve Carlson, right? Mm-hmm. You look at, you're only as good as your most limiting factor. And at the end of the day, starting with the correct soil pH, and then having your primary nutrients in check, then working into your secondary nutrients, and then last your micronutrients. That is the path to take you towards success. And the last slide that I want to hit on here, and I think it just, you skip another one? Oh, that one's after, never mind. We'll talk about how these equations piece together, right? So if we're building a variable rate map for you, what you're looking at is the deficit. So basically we look at what your soil test levels are today, look at what the farm budget can allow for, how many years we want to build that soil type, and start building a plan for how much we want to start applying on an annual basis and variable rate to start correcting that field to where we want it to be. Then we look at crop nutrient removal. Obviously, the best way to do that is from harvest maps. We can more precisely put that together basis versus just taking a blanket approach to it across the field in terms of yield. And then any credits that went into it, any applications with the planter, anything that was spread and manure, we can account for those credits as well. And the biggest thing I often see when we do the grid sampling and then go ahead and put together our map, I remember doing my first few of them at the cooperative many, many years ago was, the grower looks at it and goes, well, that's not what I expected. And what do you think he was seeing? What he was seeing was that the best, most productive areas of his field, we had mined out, right? We were taking more crop off than what our blanket application was covering. And now we were creating an environment that used to be extremely high in terms of yield potential, and actually regressing it backwards because of how much crop we've taken off and not replaced it. Favorite slide. This is from the University of Wisconsin. What we're looking at here is soil test levels and the potential of a yield response based on the fertility level. So even in a scenario where you have a field that has an optimum soil test level based on the UW's recommendations, you still have a 30 to 60% probability of a yield response from P or K fertilizer applications. And I'm guessing anybody that sat on Don's stall, his fertility was a little bit higher than that from what I heard.
Yeah, just a touch, just a skosh.
The other variable rate is nitrogen.
But he is doing P and K line.
Well, mostly just is K.
Yeah, and I wouldn't advocate that variable rate nitrogen is the right thing in all times or all places either, right? You know?
Well, his toolbox isn't as full as mine. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that.
Yeah.
Because I got a pickup truck of tools.
Yeah.
None of them get used like you said.
Yeah, I agree.
They all, just like this. I'm gonna be that guy. This sounds great. So we get it home and we go, oh, now what do I do with it?
Yeah. Well, and that absolutely is one of the challenges, right? It's about the application of it. It's about finding the right ones that fit.
It's about learning it. It's about having backing.
Yeah. So
Support.
great. I wish I should have paid you. I'll buy you a beer next in here in a few minutes. Because as we move into granular business, you don't do agronomy in a silo without understanding the financial implications. You don't run a farm on a spreadsheet and not understand agronomically what you're doing. It's a combination of the two that come together. And as we move into granular business software, I think that the first thing that I would say is that you're not buying software, and nor do we think that even with granular agronomy, it's all about the team that comes around it. Because in my opinion, farmers farm with a team. Your equipment supplier, your dealers on your team, your bankers on your team, your seed suppliers on your team, your retailers on your team. The better we do at interconnecting and working together as a team and having software that works together as a team, the better chance that we collectively are successful, right? And so when we talk about granular business software, we focus a lot on that. The software, yes, it is software, but it's about having that trainer that has that customized implementation that's specific to your farm, having a customer success manager that you meet with every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, you have somebody that's in there that's saying, hey, I see you haven't logged in the last 2 weeks. How can I help you? Is there something that I could do for you to input information? On-demand support that's based in the US, in Champaign, Illinois, and Johnston, Iowa. And then services, the ability to say, you know what, I don't have, maybe I don't have accurate as planted data, or I don't have a monitor in my planner. Can you enter that information for me so that I can get value out of it? And what this business software starts to do is heavy focus on analyzing profitability. It has lots of aspects. There's things around being able to send a work order to somebody to, hey, go do this. But that's not as applicable, or maybe not as often used as things like being able to analyze your profitability. We talk a lot about succession planning purely because it's all about information at your fingertips. If I can very easily slice and dice and dissect information, it's a lot less of a controversial conversation, and it's used to be able to do that. So how do we do that? It's field level, using mobile tools to input information. It's record keeping in the office with a lot of inputs along the way. What does that look like? It's a little blurry, but that's that dashboard of being able to say, I've got lots of scenarios going on here. I've got corn soy rotation. I've got corn on corn. I've got a wheat corn rotation. I've got different contracts on a future standpoint that I have at different locations. I've got inventory stored at maybe on farm, different or at a retail location. I've got a break even on a crop basis. So I know exactly where I'm at on a price per bushel on a break even. Well, how do I do that? By double clicking on that profit analyzer and digging into it. That gets us to this level of detail of being able to say on a field by field by field basis, what do I got going on? What's my most profitable field of maybe only corn? Maybe what's my most profitable field across the entire enterprise? What if I took this field and applied this corn on corn rotation looking forward based on what I did looking backwards, right? So there's a backwards aspect to it, but there's also, I can apply a plan and take it and look it forward. The other component that we see a lot of people find value in is various lease arrangements. I might have a share crop lease arrangement on these fields, but I have a cash rent on this field, versus I have an ownership on this field, and I haven't always been maybe accurately applying a cost to those fields that I own. You know, some of them that are still being financed, I might plug something in. Some that are free and clear, I might not be, you know, taking credit on my land ownership enterprise to be able to say, what is that actual field worth? And that gets us to this ability to understand profitability in a very complete or maybe more holistic way. You know, I got to work on just a very basic profit and loss widget. You know, you saw back when we were talking about Granular Insights, some very basic profit and loss stuff. We worked with John Deere and did just a really basic profit and loss tool in the John Deere Ops Center. And I talked with a grower in Illinois, and this was just a really basic thing. And I just said, you know, how are you doing this? And he said, well, he said, if I'm honest with you, he said, we look at how much we spent this last year, and we look at how much revenue we took in. And as long as we make more than we spent, I guess we farm next year. And there's probably some reality to that's how it is. But as things continue to get more complex, we have more complex leases. As things get complex with our marketing plans and with the challenges that we have with international markets and the variability we see in grain prices, all of a sudden that's not good enough anymore. And we need to be able to get into some of these pieces. So as we wrap up, Mike and I kind of walked you through from very simplistic informational tools to maybe much more complex tools. I think we'd reiterate that there's no wrong place to start, that our goal would be that there's a level of tools and there's a level of support that you can join in wherever it seems that it makes sense and wherever it fits. And that, you know, there is no such thing as a silver bullet. It takes lots of lead bullets. It takes applying the right ones at the right time. And it takes just the ability to have the support to do that. So that, I know we're probably right up to our time, if not a touch over. Gladly take any questions. I think we're wrapping up with a reception in the main hall. Mike and I will be in there. Feel free to ask us any questions you want. Grab our contact information if you want anything else. But with that, thank you for your time. Thank you for attending, and have a safe trip.